Welcome back to Empowered by Iron. I am Dr. Kristin Lander. I am a doctor of chiropractic, a certified sports nutritionist, and a powerlifter. I am head coach of Fiercely Fueled Nutrition Coaching, and this is my co-host, Mary Morton.
I'm Mary. I have my PhD in biological sciences. I'm also a certified nutritionist through the CISSN, and I am head coach of Intuitive Athlete Nutrition, and I am an Olympic weightlifter. And together, we are Empowered by Iron. Welcome back to Empowered by Iron, Kristin. We've had quite the week.
We have had quite the week. We were just in Colorado with Stacy Burr and Kayla of Raw Apparel, who's also an amazing photographer. You should check her out.
And Wanderloo Photography, Jillian Lewis, that we were all there together, checking out, scoping up places for a retreat in 2021.
Hell yes. We are all collaborating on a women's retreat, and it's going to be amazing. It's going to be amazing. Like the energy that all of us bring together into a room, I think is just
infectious.
Yeah, I think it was so cool once we got all of us together and started planning this, and ideas it was like, yes, this is what we were meant to do. This is what we were born to do.
Yeah, it's going to be such a fun weekend, I think, of just community and learning and having a good time and like getting to know yourself better.
Yeah.
We are so excited to begin the planning for it, and we have a name in mind, but we'll release that once we have dates and we're a little more specific. But we cannot wait to share this retreat with you. I'm stoked.
Oh my gosh, it's going to be awesome.
I honestly didn't think I'd be stoked because I'm kind of a cynic, you know. If you guys listen, you kind of know I can be kind of a hater. But man, once we were there, it was just like, oh my God, this is going to be amazing.
It is. I'm really excited about it. We all bring a little something different to the table.
That's what's going to make it fun.
So it's going to be really cool.
Yeah. So stay pumped for that. Keep your eyes open. That's going to be something exciting for early 2021.
Yes.
And yeah, without any further ado,
let's jump into today's episode.
Hello, ladies. Welcome back to Empowered by Iron. As always, I'm Mary.
I'm Kristin.
And we are here to explain the science behind female strength and biology, basically. How you doing today, Kristin?
I'm doing really good.
So this topic today is actually pretty near and dear to your heart.
It is. We had, I mentioned something in our Instagram stories about having celiac disease. And I was diagnosed with that like 13 years ago. So it's not even really something I think about. It's just really well managed. But another athlete reached out and said, oh my gosh, could you please do an episode on autoimmune disorders and being an athlete? I believe she was recently diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder. And I was like, oh, absolutely. Because I remember back in the day, I was really struggling with training and exercise and managing my autoimmune disorder.
Yeah.
And so
here we
are doing an episode on how to train and live with an autoimmune disorder.
Yeah. Well, I can imagine 13 years ago that the science just hadn't quite caught up with things as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, not to mention it took 20 years for me to get a diagnosis. I was sick that long. So, yeah.
All right.
So here we are, healthy. And I want to help you guys that have autoimmune disorders figure out like, how can I still be an athlete with an autoimmune disorder?
Because it does take some extra things.
It does. It absolutely does.
And stuff.
So for those of you that don't know what an autoimmune disorder is, it's when your immune system mistakes parts of your body as invaders and it starts attacking those tissues. So it leads to tissue damage and just declines in general health because of that. And it can also cause other illnesses, other really serious illnesses.
Yeah.
And not all autoimmune disorders are the same. Like some affect just single organs or single tissues, and others may impact like just certain types of tissues. So like it might affect your joints, and then some might affect like whole body systemic stuff. So there's like 100 or more autoimmune disorders.
Just a few.
Just a few autoimmune disorders. The most common ones are celiac disease, irritable bowel syndrome, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, and type 1 diabetes.
So like you were saying with the joints, obviously that's likely going to be mostly arthritis.
Yeah, rheumatoid arthritis.
And then
sure.
Celiac disease, so that's different than just like a gluten allergy, right?
Yeah, or like a gluten intolerance.
Or a gluten intolerance.
However, there's a lot of evidence to suggest that an underlying gluten intolerance that goes undiagnosed will lead to celiac disease.
You know, that's not too surprising. When I was a little girl, I had rabbits, and I never had an issue with rabbits. But as I was exposed to them, as time went on, I became more and more and more allergic to them. Then it got to the point basically that I couldn't be in the same room with them without having like a full-on asthma hive attack. Yeah. So that makes sense. I mean, that's how allergies work, right? They're trying to protect us for something that causes inflammation in our body. If gluten is what causes the inflammation and you keep eating it without knowing about it, or maybe you do know about it and you're just eating it anyway, over time your body's going to be like, all right, well, we just can't handle this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. You're totally right. And in that inflammatory process is what makes this so difficult as an athlete, because as athletes without autoimmune disorders, we're creating a lot of inflammation in our body through our training.
Just for fun.
Yeah. Right. Well, what's your pastime? Creating inflammation.
But for fun.
So that an athlete with an autoimmune disorder, this can be really challenging because it impairs your ability to train and recover and perform. And so symptoms may come and go. And I don't want to try to talk about all of the different symptoms of an autoimmune disorder because, like I said, there's 100 or more different autoimmune disorders.
Yeah, and we're not here today to help you diagnose an autoimmune disorder. If you have one, this episode is for you to help you figure out how to work with your autoimmune disorder and train. But if you think you might have one, that's a conversation for you and your doctor.
Right. So it's interesting because like some autoimmune disorders are really easy or fairly easy to control.
Right.
And some are a lot harder to control. I think that probably the easiest one to control is probably celiac disease. And I say that I adhere to a very strict gluten-free diet. And that part is annoying. So like the not knowing about eating out in restaurants and like going over to friends' houses and like them using a cutting board that has all these crumbs of bread on it to cut the vegetables, like that's problematic. But in terms of as long as I adhere to a gluten-free diet, I'm fine. Yeah. There are other autoimmune disorders that are not that easy to control. But the biggest thing is that the one thing that happens with autoimmune disorders in all of them across the board is that you can get flare-ups. So things might be really well under control, and then all of a sudden you get a really bad flare-up. And the flare-ups are driven by an acute increase in inflammation. So again, problematic as an athlete, right? If we go into a really heavy training block that creates a lot of inflammation, that could be enough to send us over into a flare-up.
Right.
So really training with an autoimmune disorder is all about controlling the inflammation. I think that's the hardest part, is controlling the inflammation in your body.
Right. Well, because we're creating inflammation anyway.
Exactly.
As an athlete, if you athlete, you will be inflamed in some way, shape, or form. And then to have something on the back burner that is going to maybe flare up because of it or contributes to it, you're kind of, you're getting slapped both sides.
Yeah. Exactly. You're totally right. And so what that means as an athlete is that you may have to adapt your training in accordance with how you feel on any given day or during any given period of time. So if you're feeling really good and your symptoms are minimal, and your recovery has been on point, then you're going to be in a really prime position to move into like a heavy block of training. But alternatively, if you are have a lot of stress going on in your life, you're really run down, then you might need some light recovery days in your training instead of a day that was planned to go really heavy. You might have to back off if you know that you're not feeling that great and you have all these other things going on in your life that can promote inflammation.
Yeah, it's just like a being a little off balance for some people is not a big deal. You kind of can recover within a day or two. But like you were telling me before that if you have gluten, it's not the next day that's ruined.
It's not that day or the next day. I mean, yes, that day and the next day are ruined. They are ruined.
But
it takes me, I would say, probably close to a month before my body feels like I can really get through a really good, solid training program, where everything in my life is like really grooving, like work and social life, like everything, all of those things have to be balanced because if you get too run down, the inflammation that the gluten causes in my body because it's an autoimmune disorder, makes everything else harder.
Well, yeah.
Right. And so really, if you think about all the things that we've talked about all these years with recovery, you just have to do all those things. Like all the things that we talk about recovering as an athlete, you just have to do all of that just so you can manage your life, really.
Yeah, like you have to sleep well. You have to make sure you're eating enough. Like you have to make sure you're stretching and make sure you're monitoring, maybe even monitoring your HRV like what Kristin does. Like you have to be on top of it. And it's not super fun all the time, but
yeah, absolutely. And I know a lot of really, really good athletes that have autoimmune disorders. So this can be done. And I would argue, like for me, it forces me to just have everything on point all the time.
Right.
Which to some people seems extreme, but that's how I have to manage my health. And I'm very, very high functioning in life as long as I do that. And I think that being forced to think about all the little things that make a difference in my life and how all like little tweaks can improve things or make things worse makes me a better athlete.
Yeah. That makes sense.
But one of the things that's really interesting is that there's some research about exercise and autoimmune disorders. And one of the things that they found is that high intensity exercise can be really detrimental for people with autoimmune disorders. So there was a study where they did HIIT training with athletes with autoimmune disorders. And
for you power lifters, HIIT is high intensity interval training. Which means you have bouts of sprints followed by bouts of recovery.
Yep. They defined high intensity in this study as cycling at 5 4-minute intervals at 80% of VO2 max, and then interspersed with 3-minute intervals at 50% VO2 max. And they found that resulted in a 3-fold increase in inflammatory markers. Which is crazy.
That's crazy.
Like that's really, and I remember way back, right before I was diagnosed with celiac disease, I was really, really sick and I loved going to spin class. I was a mountain biker at the time. That's how I stayed in shape over the winter, was going to spin classes. It was super fun. And I would go to a spin class and then I would spend 3 days in bed. So maybe a problem. I had to stop doing that. And now I know why. At the time I didn't, I mean, that was part of what helped me get diagnosed was like, hey, this is not normal.
That's not normal.
Especially I was like 25 or probably 25 at the time. Like a 25-year-old should be able to go to a spin class and not have to be in bed for 3 days.
I can concur.
But so we know like high intensity interval training and even high impact exercises, such as running.
Ooh, if you ever needed an excuse to not run, we've got you covered.
Yeah. Running that the compressive forces on the joints over and over and over with running can be enough to really send you into a flare up. And I also wonder if for me, Olympic, you guys may or may not know, I used to be a competitive Olympic weightlifter, and
Pretty damn good one, by the way.
Thank you. I switched over to powerlifting, not because of this at all. I was just really interested in powerlifting. I tried to compete in both for a little while. That didn't go well. So I was like, let's just focus on powerlifting. I'm a lot better at powerlifting. So let's see where I can go with this. And I recently asked my coach, can we just throw some cleans into my programming? I really
They're fun.
I miss that explosiveness and that just it's a different sort of athleticism.
Yeah.
And I did cleans one day and it wrecked me for weeks.
Yeah.
And I wonder how much of that has to do with the impact on my joints. And I remember when I cut out Olympic weightlifting and only went into powerlifting, I had this thought in the back of my head, I don't know if I'm ever going to go back to Olympic weightlifting, because for the first time in years, my body doesn't hurt.
Yeah, you don't feel wrecked.
I didn't realize how much pain I was in. Because of the type of athlete I am, I will ignore things. I will put up with a lot of pain and discomfort to get me to my goals, which is, that's why I always say I have to have a coach, because I need a coach to help me monitor that and keep me honest, because I will go so full tilt into my goals that I will ignore all of these warning signs my body tries to give me.
Yeah.
So that's the responsibility of my coach, is to keep me in check. And I just didn't realize how much pain I was in all the time. And so I wonder, this is just a complete aside, I wonder if that has to do with the impact on my joints and also my age and also all of the injuries that I've had, all of these things on top of.
Yeah, it's multifactorial. Anything in science is multifactorial. It's like these people who take a drug and say it's going to treat this symptom. Well, that one drug affects every system in your body. It just may only benefit this one system that they can test and study. So you having one day of clean, just your body just could not keep up after that, because you still had to recover. You still had to do everything for all the other days, but that one day just teetered you over to the edge of no.
It did. And I was also in a period where I was a little bit more relaxed with my recovery. I wasn't quite on top of my sleep. I was a little bit relaxed with my nutrition. I mean, when I say that, I'm still very regimented and disciplined, but it was more relaxed than I normally am. And that's when I was like, okay, wake up. This is not, we can't go down this road or you're going to self-destruct.
You guys, you heard it here first. Kristin is human. She does relax in things, and sometimes she does not follow her nutrition 100%.
And then it's a really good reminder of oh, right, this is why I'm so regimented, because all of the things I have going on in my life force me to have to dial everything in, or I can't function the way I want to function.
Yeah. Well, and can we go on an aside on that? So I mean, I personally have been getting this feeling lately of feeling like I'm missing out if I have to keep everything so regimented like that. And I want to be the first to tell you guys, you're not missing out on anything. In fact, you're just creating a life for you that's protective of your energy and protective of your health. Kristin is creating this bubble around herself to make sure that what she's doing, the things inside of her bubble, are going to be optimized. So she has enough sleep to do all her work. She has enough sleep to train. She's eating enough to do all the things. She's creating this regimented life that lets her live her best life. #best life. But, you're not missing out just because you have to be more regimented. In fact, you're just making your body healthier so you can do the things you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if I am not regimented like that, this is what ends up happening is a friend calls me up. Hey, you want to go shopping? Hey, you want to go out to lunch? Hey, you want to do that? And then before I know it, I have 5 social engagements in a week. And then, and while I'm having fun, everything else in my life suffers, and then it's not worth it to me. So I have to be okay, I can handle 2 social things in a week. I mean, it's just managing your energy, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a lot of just being an adult.
Yeah. Well, you have to be so protective of your energy because you can waste it on so many stupid things. Like, friends are not stupid, but like social media, you could totally waste hours of your day just doing nothing. And that's energy you could have been spent doing other things. But that was just a side tangent. Let's continue on with autoimmune stuff.
Yeah. So let's talk about though. So we're talking about high impact exercise or high intensity exercise kind of making inflammation worse. But the flip side, lifelong training. If you can find training that doesn't create too much inflammation, which I would think that lifting really fits in with that. If you can find training that doesn't create too much inflammation, lifelong training improves the anti-inflammatory environment in your body and maintains the number of regulatory T cells, which are types of cells in your body that regulate your immune system. They help your body maintain homeostasis and they prevent autoimmune disorders. So that means that if you could find training that is good for you, long-term use of that is going to help manage and improve your autoimmune disorder, which I think is really cool.
It's kind of just like you're just strengthening your immune system. It's just like you're periodizing your immune system. You're giving it just a little bit extra every single day for years, and it can adapt as long as you don't blast it with a nuke of training. You just give it little bits.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that this is the hardest thing so being an athlete with an autoimmune disorder, I think the hardest thing is just learning to listen to your body.
Yeah.
And not only that, like being honest. That's the thing that's hard for me is being honest with what my body's telling me.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I'm like, oh, every joint in my body hurts and I need 12 hours of sleep a night. It's fine. We're going to go max out. Totally fine. Like, because I'm such a rule follower, like, well, that's what my programming says to do. So that's what I'm going to do. Whereas maybe you need to have a conversation with your coach and be like, hey, this is what's going on. I'm not trying to be a baby about it, but this is what's going on in my body. And my body's telling me like, I probably shouldn't do this today. And if you have a good coach, they're going to be like, oh, absolutely. No, we need to modify your programming for today.
Yeah.
If you have a bad coach, they're going to say, suck it up and go do it.
Bad coach. And guys, keep in mind, like, just like we said so many times, like your coach is there to support you. And as long as you're not complaining about every little thing, like Kristin is a brick. I'm a brick. We don't complain about things and we don't usually talk about injuries, even though we probably should. And I think both of us are getting better about it. But we don't make a lot of fuss for our coaches. So if we come up with something and we're like, hey, like this week I really screwed up my back, and I texted my coach and I said, listen, I don't complain about things, but I can't get up off the floor. So we got a problem. And, you know, you have to recognize when there's an actual problem and when things are just hard.
Yeah. Wow. That's like a whole different podcast episode for sure. Because I think that there's like a couple different camps of people, and there's a camp of people like they will complain about everything. And so then when there's actually a real problem, their coach is like not really sure, is this actually real or is this just another thing that they're complaining about?
Yeah.
Or then there's people like us where like, I'm not going to text my coach and tell her something's wrong. The only time I've ever texted her and told her something was wrong was when I had the stomach flu and had been vomiting nonstop for like 24 hours and was like, hey, I don't think I'm going to be able to train today. I didn't even say I can't train today. I was like, I don't think I'm going to be able to
But if you tell me I have to go do it, I'll get out of bed. I'll bring my puke bag with me.
Right. Like for instance, leading up to a meet, I had a flare up of an old knee injury and I didn't even want to talk about it. I wasn't like, I'm not going to even put this energy out there that this is happening. I'm going to pretend it's not happening. I knew how to manage it. I knew what to do. I knew it was going to be fine. It's been an issue since I was 16. Like I know how to manage it. Yeah. So I don't bring it up because I want to save that for when something's really wrong. Yeah.
But if you're having knee problems, maybe talk to your coach.
Yeah. Right.
Like I said, we're still learning.
I don't know. I'm always going to be this way. I know how I am. I just have to find the right coach who will help figure me out. And I've done that. Stacy's a godsend. All right. So let's talk a little bit about what you can do nutritionally
To
control inflammation in your body. And this is actually going to go for everyone, right? Whether or not you have an autoimmune disorder or not, this is going to be beneficial for everyone.
Oh, yeah.
So nutritionally, one thing that's really important with autoimmune disorders in particular is following an anti-inflammatory diet. So there's a lot of mixed definitions of what an anti-inflammatory diet is. There's some really extremes out there for anti-inflammatory diet. We are taking our definition from an article that was published in the Journal of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. They tried to look at all of the different definitions of an anti-inflammatory diet and put together something that's a little more middle of the road. Yeah. And so what they've said is that you need to eat plenty of fruits and vegetables.
Duh.
You need a good source of omega-3 fatty acids, such as fish oil, or walnuts if you are vegan. Eat plenty of whole grains such as brown rice and bulgur wheat if you can have wheat. I want to make one comment about the grains though. If you've got celiac disease, you can't have gluten, so you have to be careful. And there may also be a spectrum of grain intolerances. So you might not be able to eat all grains, and you're going to have to just kind of figure out what works for you.
Yeah.
You need to eat lean protein, such as chicken. Cut back on red meat and full fat dairy products, or just cut back on animal sources of fat is really what that boils down to.
Animal sources that aren't that also are grass fed.
Yes,
pasture raised.
So grass fed or pasture raised animals have a healthier fat profile, and so those fats would be a lot healthier for you. And minimizing saturated and trans fats, avoiding refined foods and processed foods, and consuming alcohol only in moderation. And then they also talk about adding in certain things, spices, especially ginger and curry. The curry because it has turmeric in it, or curcumin, which is the active form of turmeric. Really, really powerful anti-inflammatory
and an anti-cancer
absolutely
spice. Believe it or not.
Yes,
lots of great studies about that.
So I want to clear something up. That an anti-inflammatory diet is not the same as just eating whatever the hell you want to eat and then taking anti-inflammatory agents such as ibuprofen or other NSAIDs.
No.
You cannot eat like crap and then cover it up with a Band-Aid that has razor blades in it.
Yeah, you can't. You're going to feel like trash, and then you're going to keep giving your body things that are going to continue to make it be trash.
Right. I've read some research that suggests that, so we know that ibuprofen is really hard on the gut. I've read some research that suggests that ibuprofen is maybe to blame for non-celiac gluten intolerances, or even maybe possibly celiac disease, which makes me wonder then if it could cause other autoimmune disorders. So, it's just something to think about. Yeah. So it's not, you've got to get your diet under control, not eat whatever you want and then try to cover it up with something else. Doesn't work that way.
Yeah. And keep in mind, you're not missing out on anything. You're getting your body healthy. Yeah. You're getting your body to a state that it can do things. I was once at a talk where they said the appropriate amount of NSAIDs, ibuprofen, or aspirin, or any drugs you might take for a headache or pain is no NSAIDs. So if you could never take them, that would be ideal.
Absolutely. Yep. And then another thing that's really important is that in autoimmune disorders, we see a lot of food allergies and food intolerances, and it's really important to avoid those things. You need to avoid those foods. I know people that have gluten intolerances and celiac disease that refuse to adhere to a gluten-free diet. And that is really problematic. Number one, celiac disease, if you don't adhere to a gluten-free diet, it increases your incidence or your likelihood of getting gastrointestinal cancers.
Bad.
We don't want those. But also just your quality of life is going to be just in the shithole.
Yeah, you're not going to feel good. You're always going to feel something's wrong. And you don't, you know that feeling in your gut when something doesn't feel right. That's just how you're going to feel all the time. Yeah. Was there ever a point when you got diagnosed that you kind of rebelled, or when you were diagnosed, that do you just say, all right, I guess I'm not doing any of this anymore?
I was so sick. I was so sick.
Like constant sick?
Constantly, like ill all the time, had no energy. My hair was falling out. I was really malnourished. I just wanted my life back. So within 2 weeks of adhering very strictly to a gluten-free diet, I started to feel a lot better. Crazy, just in 2 weeks. I mean, I still had years to go to get to where I am now, but I started to feel like, oh my gosh, I might get over this. That I was like, I will never eat gluten. Like, if this is what I have to do, fine. And then I think I did have like one time where I was like, I really loved donuts. I think I ate a donut or a cookie or something and then was like so sick. I think it was like only once or twice in the first few months. And then since then, I have not intentionally eaten gluten in 13 years. Yeah. Because it makes me so horribly sick. Now, that doesn't mean that I haven't accidentally had it. I have. I've had mix-up at restaurants. That's the most common thing, is a mix-up at a restaurant. Or one time I was taking a supplement for gut health that was recommended to me for people with celiac disease, and it actually had wheat in it.
Are you kidding me?
I am not kidding you. I was so mad. I will never, ever buy a supplement from this company again. It's actually like a lot of healthcare practitioners use this company, and I will never buy anything from them again.
Just like being vegan, I guess, and celiac disease, always read the labels because they sneak crap in all the time.
They do. Yep.
All the time. So what if we put it all together? So what does it look like if you have an autoimmune disease and you're trying to control it so you can train?
Yeah, really, your recovery has to be on point. You have to be getting enough sleep every night. So 8 to 10 hours of sleep every night. You need to have your nutrition on point, which means like following an anti-inflammatory diet, but also making sure that you're eating enough. Mm-hmm. And then stress management is huge too. So if you have a really stressful job, then making sure that you're taking time out for yourself, like meditation, reading, quiet time, whatever you need to do to manage your stress. So your recovery has to be on point. And then you just have to adjust your training. I think taking a proactive approach is really good. So what I really like to do is if I travel or we have big like work projects coming up.
Yeah.
I know that I'm probably going to be a little bit more under recovered. And so I don't necessarily adjust my training. I adjust everything else in my life around that.
Right.
I make sure that I get extra sleep. I won't schedule a lot of social events that week or that month, whatever it might be. I really just am protective of my energy. So adjust your training or your life when you know you're probably going to be a little bit under recovered. Mm-hmm. I think those are some really proactive. I think having an autoimmune disorder and being an athlete is all about taking a proactive approach, knowing how your body responds to things. If you're newly diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder, this is going to take a lot of trial and error.
And that's okay.
I mean, in some respects, I'm still learning things. Every year about how different things affect my body, but really listening to your body and being willing to say, like, don't be in denial and don't say, nope, I can do all these 100 things I have scheduled this week and it's not going to affect me. It is going to affect you. or is
Heavily.
likely going to affect you.
Yeah.
So be proactive, pick and choose. I like to say like cut out all non-essentials. Especially like if you're having a flare up, or like I said, you know it's going to be a period of under recovery, or you're coming up on a meet.
Yeah.
Cut out all those non-essentials so that you can recover well, because that's what it's all about, is just recovering.
You're teetering on the edge of too much all the time, especially if you have an autoimmune disorder or disease. So you have to make sure that you are not teetering on the wrong side.
Yeah. I mean, the smallest thing can send you over the edge.
Yeah.
So
Like
just
a
be
crumb of
mindful of that.
gluten.
Like a crumb of gluten. Yeah. So just be mindful of that and know how things affect your body.
Yeah.
And you can do it. Like if you aspire to be a high level athlete and you have an autoimmune disorder, you can do it. It just takes more planning and preparation than other people. But don't be discouraged. You will have setbacks, but every athlete is going to experience setbacks. So it can be done. Just be patient.
You're a female strength athlete. You can do whatever the hell you want. Just be proactive and stay on top. If you guys have any questions about this, you can always reach us on Instagram, Female Strength Academy, or on Instagram as Empowered by Iron. We are there hanging out with you guys, and that's it. That was this episode.
Yeah. Have an awesome week. We will talk to you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.